you, Kenjiro, for your great paper.
とう。
And yes, we are listening to your questions later in the Q&A session. Now it's time for me to present the last speaker. I hope I didn't mispronounce anything. I'm quite confident. Luca Proietti is a PhD candidate in Japanese studies at the SOAS University of London. His interests feature performing arts, media and literature, and their relationship within subcultures. He's involved in a research project on Japanese noise music as a form of cultural engagement tied with historical and cultural aspects from traditional folklore to contemporary pop culture. And now he's presenting Save the Noise, Supportive Acts and Works in Japanese Noise Music in the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mattia. Thank you also to all the audience, both online and in person. I want to express my gratitude to Jeremy and Chiaru for bringing me here in Bordeaux and for all their efforts to make this event happening. And so today I want to share what is a little bit extract of my research about Japanese noise music, and I'm glad to see that there are so many fellow researchers that are researching on topics that are also related to my research and my presentations. We know noise as usually when you think about the word noise, you think about a disturbing signal present in a transmission perceived more or less unpleasantly by the receiver, but it can also be considered, musically speaking, as a musical element in different genres to create effects such as feedback, distortion, dissonances, and whatsoever. And this element has been also further developed in what is labeled as genre noise music. And of course, during the pandemic, during the pandemic, musicians and venues challenged the pandemic to try to survive. And in this sense, in this paper, I want to delve into this experimental and subcultural scene to underline the means of survival that led the related acts to help and strengthen the local communities in Japan in the face of the crisis, and to consider, by considering both works related to the pandemic and all the solutions that have been implemented by local venues to continue to preserve their independent and I would say also messy cultural identity of Japanese noise. So when you think about noise, I would say that the first attempt to produce noise as a musical aesthetic came from Italy, from the futurist Luigi Russolo, who is probably the first noise artist with his experimentation through this instrument, the intona rumori. And he published the futurist manifesto, The Art of Noises, in which he considered the cacophonous noisescape of modernity a possibility to provide listeners with the new acoustical pleasures and to produce new sonic sensations through the recollection of life conditions. And this concept has been developed further by Dada artists like Edgar Varese, concrete music artists like Pierre Schaeffer, and avant-garde artists like John Cage, who is also well known for his song 4 minutes 33 seconds, in which it is a composition with only silence, though he made this composition by highlighting how there is no silence at all, but only accidental sounds that remind life itself, its indiscernibility, complexity, and unpredictability. And this concept is also linked with his interest in the Zen mysticism and the concept of Ma, in which the sound exists only in combination with the silence. And this experimentation has been brought speaking about group Ongaku has been brought in Japan in the 60s during the protests of the Japanese after the Japan-US Security Treaty, and these experimentations has been made by taking into account the influences from surrealism, futurism, abstractism, and Dada, with also local influences such as kabuki and no, and to produce music by using both traditional musical instruments and noisy objects such as vacuum cleaners, radio, old drums, as a sort of a reaction to preserve Japanese culture and identity through transnational reworking. And these experimentations have been later developed in noise music genres that have been somehow labeled as Japanoise and Onkyo, that are, the first one is more close with punk culture, industrial music, while the second one is more minimalistic and more close with environmental music, which is also open a quite a problematic discourse about how Japanese noise artists are keen to be labeled as noise and has different subgenres, given that they are also interested in emphasizing their own style. So to speak about noise in times of pandemic, I want to also I decided to relate with two events. The first one is Fukushima, in which noise, in which artists related to noise like Otomo Yoshihide and Pika from the band Afrirampo produced different festivals in order to they were also inspired by the Matsuri in order to create a sense of community during the difficult times of Fukushima. As we already know that Otomo was organizing these festivals for the local people of Fukushima, while in the case of Pika, we are speaking about her own community of Osaka. And I want to also to speak about, and I also take into account an actual movie dated in 2005, which is titled Eli Eli Lema Sabachthani, which is an Aramaic quote from Psalm 22, which means, my God, what hast thou forsaken me? And it's about noise in times of a pandemic, because in this movie, which features also among the protagonists, Japanese noise musician Nakahara Masaya, has a plot that is centered on how noise would function as a cure during a mass disease that leads people to suicide. And by highlighting the noise as a subversive and transformative element that can exist only in circulation, it is indicated this can be taken into account by thinking about how the director of the movie, Aoyama Shinji, decided to underline this topic in the midst of the pandemic by thinking about how the circulation of noise can make it reach to the people. And so I would move forward. So after this brief framework, I would reach the infamous year 2020, in which COVID happened. And one of my first findings was the album made in collaboration by Merzbau, who is probably the most well-known Japanoise artist in the world, and the alternative rock band who are also related to noise, Boris. And this album, which has a scrambled title of the phrase 2020 rest in peace, Was it made to express solidarity amid the COVID pandemic and provide encouragement for overcoming the crisis by creating a new chapter for the humanity? And this album has been presented by Boris by these words. This year was a period of trial for everyone in the world, and this work becomes a monument to the requiem of the previous era, and from here a new world begins again. And to fully understand the social message of this album, the songs are mainly focused on the music rather than on the lyrics, and the sound has been made in order to shift through different moods, in order to somehow imagining a story about the desire of build a more genuine life, detaching from what can be considered the material illusions of consumerism that was crumbling during the pandemic. I wish to make you listen in 2 different samples, if it's possible. This is the first one. Okay, I move forward. This was the song "Away from You," and this is the song. No, sorry. Okay, and this is the song "Love." I guess we can move forward, so you can hear that I decided to listen. I chose these 2 different samples to emphasize different moods and styles of noise music in which they can deal with the feelings that people felt during the pandemic, and this album somehow has been accompanied with other works that were being made in Japan during the pandemic. For example, 2 different albums, again from Boris, No and W. The first one was written and recorded quickly in March 2020 during the isolation, and it was inspired by as it was described in their own words, a mirror that gathers and reflects people's negative energy at a different angle, one that is positive, and that is the power of and potential of the dark, extreme and brutal noise music that we have experienced up to this point. And the second one, W, was intended as a companion piece of the album No, in fact, if you can, it can be function as a continuation by jointing the title album in the word Now. And whereas the previous album was focused on aggressive hardcore songs, the second one focuses on ethereal and ambient compositions to serve as a counterpoint. And these albums are intended to address the uncertainty of the pandemic, with the band describing the project as a continuous circle of harshness and healing. Other works came also by other artists who also dealt their music by also by also emphasizing the imagery through their covers. One that is noticeable to mention is Pandemics Coronalis by Kimide Kusavka, or K2, and which was recorded in 2020. And you can see that this is a picture of a real abandoned hospital. It's not made. This picture was not made during the pandemic. It was made before the pandemic, and it was somehow choose to symbolically. The whole work was made to symbolically depict the days of the COVID, when the panic, terror, and isolation were widespread, and the future seemed grim. And another one that I worth mentioning is the artist Tamaki Ueda, aka Banetoriko, who is a Japanese artist who made noise music inspired by the yokai, the supernatural creatures of the Japanese folklore. And this work, Ekikara Out of Plug, features the song named Itsumade and Amabie, who are also depicted here in this cover. Itsumade is an eerie reptilian bird which makes her first recorded appearance in the Taiheki, fictional history of Japan written in the 14th century, and actually she appeared during a plague and she was summoned by the victims of the plague, the victims who suffer in the plague, actually. And and went forward by saying also that the other one, it's Amabie, is a mermaid like yokai with a mixture of the human and fish features, and around there is the says that is prophecies either an abundant harvest or an epidemic, and she instructed people to make copies of its likeness to defend against the illness. And so, besides the actual works made by the artists, it is worth noting how also the actual venues make their work to find solutions to preserve their own communities, their own subculture. One that is worth mentioning is Club Goodman, a music venue in Chiyoda in Tokyo, which serves as which organizes events that could be attended both in person and virtually, ensuring accessibility for audiences even after live performances. And so you can see that here there has been clips promoted events like the one featuring the artist Haino Keiji, often closely related, said to be related to noise, in order to encourage viewers to watch the performances on the venue's YouTube channel. And there has been also collective albums made by venues like Namba Bears in Osaka and Ochiai Soup in Tokyo. The first one was featuring artists like Fushitsusha, Masonna, Acid Mother Temples. The second one has has two CDs, one with Japanese artists like Government Alpha, Endo Kazumoto and Mikawato Shiji, and the other one with foreign artists. And actually, Ochiai Soup also decided to raise funds and maintain his existence by doing a crowdfunding, a sort of crowdfunding project online through the Bandcamp, in which the artists produce their own music to help Ochiai Soup to their preservation. This catalog comprises over 50 releases by both local and international experimental acts, including Japanese noise artists and both Japanese noise artists and foreign artists. And these releases were sold under the Name Your Price model, in which it allows fans to choose their amount to pay. And given its mission to help indie artists, the case of Ochai Soup could not be considered an unicum in the Japanese independent music scene, as also other Tokyo Live clubs and music shops focused on noise and experimental music, like, for example, Starry sold their albums working as an independent label or years before the pandemic. So in this sense, the preservation of the underground subculture came also by relying on the name and the reputation of Bandcamp to enforce the independent identity of, in this case, Ochai Soup, and to make these venues brand themselves as clubs with clear links with the underground audience. And this commercial success tied with the reputation of supporting independent music scenes by achieving by fostering close social connections between artists and their audiences through a policy that allows the audience to pay as their wish. And so additionally, this platform creates a sort of resonance, helps to create a source of resonance with initiatives that are specifically aided to preserve, to help the artists towards the pandemic, also in localized context as in Japan. Okay. So after these findings, I would like to bring my conclusions about how the preservation of Japanese noise during the COVID pandemic underscores its enduring significance as an independent cultural and social community that is deeply intertwined with its paradoxical capacity to heal and disrupt, allowing individuals to engage in an active recollection of their lived realities with an abstract, yes, yet tangible medium for emotional and social reflection. And at its core, noise operates by taking into account a word from Michel Serres as a parasite, disrupting the established norms and conventions to reconfigure how we perceive and interact with sound and meaning. And this disruptive force does not seek to dismantle for disruption's sake, but rather to transform and reimagine and generating new spaces for cultural and performative actions. And in the circulation of Japanese noise, cultural content is constantly reproduced, not as fixed artifacts, but as living processes, enabling an ever-evolving community of listeners and creators to redefine the boundaries of their social and artistic experiences. And a distinctive aspect of Japanese noise lies in its messy and complex hybridity, in which Japanese noise embodies an instinctive, almost chaotic layering of influences, offering an uncanny repetition that disrupts any fixed notion of Japanese cultural identity. And through this dislocation, noise challenges traditional interpretations of cultural signification, reframing Japan's modern identity by one that thrives in its fluidity and the resistance to being pinned down. And during the pandemic, the characteristic of Japanese noise, such as disruptiveness, hybridity, and transformative circulation, emerged as both a reflection and a countermeasure to the chaos. And by immersing listeners in its unstructured intensity, it provided a space for introspection and connection, even amidst physical separation. And Japanese noise during the pandemic not only preserved this messy identity, but also affirmed its intrinsic healing potential by inviting the individuals to find solace in its disruptive resonance while exploring the depths of cultural and personal transformation. So I would like to conclude with a quote from Marie Thompson by thinking about how noise can, in this sense, serve to startle, threaten, and can also annoy. And it is also but it can also associated with feelings of stress and frustration. However, it may also contribute, maybe also because of it, to produce feelings of belonging and also to emphasize the feelings to preserve community and also to think about nostalgia. Thank you so much.